r/NoSleep. Posted by you/The Dangerous. The strange handbook we get as 911 operators. I remember thinking it was all a joke. That my boss was deadpanning, and that everyone was together on it. It was just so surreal, so unbelievable. It was nothing like I'd experienced before this. And they told me this, on my second week. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? I told them. Most people quit after they hear it. And you thought I wouldn't because I've spent a week here? 911 operators are necessary. Without us, things get boggled down, calls don't get heard, or the proper treatment they deserve. This isn't right. I'm willing to live with it, he said to me. Are you? That was the question. Was I going to keep working here? A huge increase in risk, without an equal increase in pay. Hell, not even that. I wasn't getting any increase in pay whatsoever. But, you know, I couldn't help but feel curious about it. He handed me a book. The cover was black, and it was about an inch thick. It didn't have a title. I guess this wasn't for marketing, or for casual reading. Upon flipping to the first page, I was immediately given an example of a monster calling, and afterwards I was tied to it. I got the whole week for myself, just to read and learn from that book. My own little type of Necronomicon, or I wager, Operaticon. I couldn't believe most of the stories on there. I kept repeating to myself, this just can't be true. Oh, how sweet summer child. The first thing I learned was that you should never, under any circumstances, give them your real name. Fake names were a coin toss as far as I could tell, because they were really nicknames. And what was a name if not the original nickname? The way to circumvent this was simply to give someone else's name. I gave Petera, my coworker's name, and she gave mine, Marie. You'd think that would be stupid. At the end of the day, the creature still has our names, but it's not the name that's important. It's the giving of the name. It's like consenting to something. Some of the monsters were really insistent on getting my name. That's how you knew something was up. If they keep asking for your name, even after you've given them someone else's name. They got clever in how they did it. Here's an example. Date, August 21, 2022. Time, 22:13. 911, what is the nature of your emergency? Might I ask who I'm speaking to? Yes, this is Petera. How might I help you? Arg, wait, I didn't hear you, could you repeat that? My name is Petera, sir. Arg, is it alright if I call you Alexandra? No, my name is Petera. Please refer to me by it. You're a filthy little liar, Marie. I'll find you. Call ended. I remember my complexion turning pale white, and my hands shaking as I put down the floor. I decided that I needed a quick break, and stood up from my chair and moved towards the resting room. Petra stood there, and when she saw my expression, I think she realized what had happened. She hugged me, and I almost broke into sob. In these moments, I've been advised to think about the reason I'm here, about the times I've helped people. What happened? She asked. Somebody called asking for my name. I didn't give them it, and then they somehow knew my name and spat at me. Was their voice dark? And rough? Yeah. Did they try to call you Alexandra perchance? Yeah, do you know him? That freak's been calling for years now. It was good that you didn't let him call you Alexandra, that would be the same as giving him a nickname. That's what I figured. He's one of the milder ones. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but one time he called a recruit. They came to me later, and told me that they'd given their names, before the call had ended. They didn't show up the next day. Sometimes people from another universe would somehow call in. I didn't know how it worked, but they'd be crying over some sort of disaster, desperately pleading for help. But when help arrived, they'd see nothing off there. I reckoned it had something to do with multiple phones calling at the same time, maybe the same number, at the same spot. The different types of disasters that had struck humans that sounded just like me was absolutely terrifying. A plague spreading, a meteorite, a tsunami, a storm, something else deciding it no longer wanted to sit still, that type of thing. But sometimes the threats didn't come from the phone. They were in the office with the rest of us. I remember one day going to work, and finding an exact replica of myself sitting on the chair, taking calls, smiling, helping. I tapped her on the shoulder, and when she saw me, she calmly stood up, and walked away. As if nothing had happened. When I asked my coworkers about it, they seemed fairly calm about the whole thing. Couldn't tell you two apart. There'll be the warning calls. When those come, we're instructed to forward it to some sort of organization. It was usually cults I'd never heard of, warning me of a mistake they'd made when they summoned one of their own. Here's an example of the more freaky ones. Date: February 26, 2020. Time: 20:43. 911. What is the nature of your emergency? Disaster. The voice on the other side spat. Little girl. The world as we know it will be destroyed. The whole world as we know it will disappear entirely. They have been released. Unchained. Free. Angry. Furious. Sir, could you be more clear? Clarity is a sin, not a virtue. Listen, little girl. Don't ever acknowledge them. Don't say their names. Hell, the only way you stay safe is by ignoring them. Do you understand? Sir, could you describe them a little bit more? That I cannot do. Are they around you? If they're around you, tell me you couldn't hear I just said. I didn't catch that. How many? 100. Where are you? Far beneath Washington. Very well, sir. I will be connecting you to those proficient in dealing with these matters. Please hang on. I didn't hear much about this afterwards. There didn't seem to be any consequences of it. Until a picture of a large, gray, statue-looking creature being shot down was posted online. I had a terrible feeling then. You'll get the normal horrors, the expected ones. A girl calling after failing to wake her dead mother, or a serial killer wanting to brag. You know the worst part about those? I just couldn't care anymore. I felt like I'd been on a vile gore site, and then I saw a common wound. It just didn't elicit any emotions within me. It felt childish almost. It shouldn't, but it did. I worried during those moments. I felt there was something seriously wrong with my head. I couldn't help but think that wasn't just a feeling. Sometimes I wasn't allowed to hang up. Sometimes hanging up meant pissing the other end off, and with some creatures that was the last thing you wanted to. They'd sit there and describe their horrific act in detail, as if they had all the time in the world, and I was forced to sit there and listen. Nothing else I could do. Absolutely nothing. If they told you to keep listening, or to turn the call off, you had no choice in the matter. Hell, sometimes they could sense if you weren't paying full attention, and they'd stop and ask you about it. Marie, are you paying attention? One time, I'd heard one of my co-workers throw the phone against a wall. Their face was red, and they looked seconds away from shrieking. Even when we tried to talk to them about it, they wouldn't budge. The next day they called me, panicking. I could hear some sort of shrieking noise from the background. The call ended abruptly. I never heard from them again. That was the thing that scared me the most. It was something entirely different to have somebody you cared for disappear. It was just as real as the deaths you heard about, logically, but psychologically, it wasn't a number or a name disappearing. It was a person, their identity and personality perishing alongside. And my brain understood that. Not just in an intellectual way. So yeah, I never hanged up first, except for one time. One time I was supposed to hang up. It was if the caller on the other side said goodbye. A simple word, but one that had to be respected. As you could assume, there was consequences to not following that rule. They found you disrespectful. The ones that told you when to hang up always spoke slowly. That was the way you'd identify them. I don't know what the hell they were. Probably some sort of sick monster. No. Certainly some sort of sick monster, but one that really valued their goodbyes. Compared to the other ones, they're not all that bad. They really just call in to speak about their day, and how it's gone. It's a regular conversation. Nothing odd about it. Forward and back, until the goodbye. And that's the end. Always. Not ending the call at goodbyes like not turning the car when there's a cliff ahead. Certain peril. No question about it. It was a really stupid way to go about things, and I really disliked it. It's tricky. It really is. But that's the way things went here. One time I didn't follow that call. After I shut off the call, something strange happened. My screen turned black for a mere second. It just shut off, and then I was back on the call with the same person as before, although the calm tone was entirely gone. By the time I'd realized what my mistake was, I couldn't do anything about it. Damn it. The exhaustion that had made me commit the mistake decided to not stick around, disappearing the second I realized what was happening. The slick bastard. My heart hammered, and my voice shook. It was the first time I had broken the rules, and I really hoped that it wouldn't go down badly. They spoke with anger. So you think we're worthless? No, please, it was a mistake. Bullshit. You think we're worthless, not worth your time, huh? I'll show you what happens when you disrespect me in such a way. And then the call ended, leaving me pondering what the hell it was they would do me. Was it going to be murder, and if so how? Would they decapitate my head, or stab me and let me slowly bleed to death, or would they poison me and turn my body blue, or would they tie weights to my ankles and toss me into the ocean for the sharks to eat? Maybe it would be worse. Maybe they'd abduct me, and torture me for hours on end. I'd heard calls of torture victims. Their voice had a certain quality to it. It sounded entirely broken. There was no confidence or spirit in there any longer. I had no doubts that would happen to me. People had a wrong conception that they'd be able to survive torture. No. Not a chance. I couldn't pinch my arm for more than 10 seconds without wanting to scream out in pain. What if that happened for hours on end, day after day? I'd lose it. Something inside of my brain would snap. I'd stop functioning. My eyes would lose their glint, and drool would slowly escape my lips without my having any clue about it. That's the type of person I could become, and that prospect terrified me like nothing else. Just the mere thought of it happening was enough to dose me full of anxiety and stress, and I didn't want to deal with that like whatsoever. I needed to make things right before they did. How though? I tried calling the number back, but of course I got no response. Fortunately, we had a type of emergency tool we could use to locate the phone's location. It used GPS, although I'm not going to act like I understood it at all. Although I'll say right now, that I had never been more thankful for the feature. The call was coming from town. From an abandoned building, and I knew that I had to head there, or that something infinitely terrible would happen to me. It was a strange thing to fight against my own body in this manner. The parts of me unable to understand reasoned though this was a terrible idea. Heading straight into the forest was absolutely terrible. And also terrifying. My feet were heavy, and refused to lift from their spot. I had to strain with each single step towards the spot. My body shivered and shook. My heart deafened me. It was one thing to fall to death, it was another thing entirely to walk to it. Eventually I reached the abandoned house, and I stood right outside of the door as the rain began. It rained outside. That was something I realized as I stood in front of the door to the abandoned house. I hadn't even noticed that until I reached the door. It was like somebody was playing a game with me. I didn't like it one bit. Not right now. Not when the truth could be falsehood, and falsehood could be the truth. That's the thing with creatures like this. You never know exactly what to expect. It could be the best thing ever. That was probably how the monsters experienced it. Just free food. Free undefensible food. For what the hell were you supposed to do when faced with the unknown, and ununderstandable? I sure as hell didn't know. Pray for the best maybe? Maybe that's why gods were such a widespread phenomenon. Humans needed something, some way of combating these creatures. And they found an answer that could work every time. A promise that everything would turn out well. Not given to you by another human. That would be worthless. No. It was given by the big guy upstairs. I knocked on the door, but I got no answer, but footsteps came from deeper within the house. I knew for a fact that there was something there. I cringed, and my body took 3 steps backwards without me knowing about it. It just never came into my awareness. I knocked again, careful not to break the door. If hanging up on this creature was enough to get me killed, then I wouldn't want to imagine what breaking its door would do. Whatever chance of forgiveness I had would disappear. Wood creaked, and I prepared myself. Something was approaching the door. I put on a smile. I didn't think it would convince them, but at least it would partially hide the absolute horror covering my face. The door opened. Dread. Horror. Terror. A fake smile. Shock. There was a human standing there. Her face stripped of blood, and her hair was loose. I don't think there was more than 10 hair strands. It looked to be in terrible condition. I thought my smile was terrible, but hers was even worse. She looked scared. More scared than I'd ever been in my life. I wasn't sure what to do. Hello? What? She spat. I'm the 911 operator somebody in this house called. And? I've come to apologize for my rude behavior. I will speak to it for you. My head jerked right when I heard the shutters on the window to my right rustle. Had it been watching me? My body unwillingly shook with disgust. The girl saw my response and frowned. Fuck. She was about to shut the door when I gripped it, and held it open. I couldn't let things end like this. It wasn't hard to open it up. Matter of fact, she was remarkably weak. When I looked at her arm, I noticed only bones. You don't deserve this, I whispered with a shaky voice. Let's hope its hearing isn't great. She didn't say anything. Damn, why aren't you saying anything? What are you thinking? I kept talking. You know that thing's a monster. I can get you out of here." "Really?" she whispered back, her eyes turning glossy. "Yes," I said, happy that I'd gotten though. "All right, wait here, I'll go and talk with it." The door closed, and I heard her walking away into the room to the right. They spoke in whispers. Her tone was entirely different from the way she'd spoken with me. Instead of spitting, or cursing, she was calm and pleasant, as if she was talking to a temperamental child. She walked back to the door and opened it. "It wants to see you." I swallowed dry saliva and stepped inside. She clutched my arm and pulled me close. "Don't break eye contact." The creature wasn't what I'd expected. It certainly wasn't threatening. It was barely half a meter tall, had one eye, was bald, and walked quickly on two legs. It looked at me with an eye of scrutiny. I didn't know if I should laugh or jerk back in disgust. Was this the thing I was so terrified about? "Chloe," it said, "go make us tea." "Very well, master." When she had left, he came closer to me. I made sure to keep eye contact, and no matter how much I wanted to scoot away from the filthy little rat, I stayed still. I didn't want to piss it off just in case. "You know I heard you," it said. "You called me a monster." No, Yumu's hands were on my neck, clenching. I couldn't breathe. There was a lot of force in his wrists, much more than I had assumed. I hadn't seen him move. Not a blur. Not out of him being too fast. No. Our positions were different. He wasn't standing in front of me. He was standing on the couch beside me, and his hand extended to my neck, clenching. It had all been instantaneous, like all the moments in between had been removed. "But," he said with tears in his eyes, "I trusted her. I gave her a home. I fed her, and she stabbed me in the back?" Fed her? I couldn't. At that moment my fear sent me to shift somehow. Instead of running away, I wanted to fight somehow. Through a strained voice, I gave him a piece of my mind. "Feed? Really? Are you fucking joking me? She looks fucking starved. My woman can't weigh more than me. You're fucking disgusting. I understand for you humans this doesn't make much sense, but understand something about me. I'm not a human, this is how we operate. Get that through your head. Fuck you." His clench tightened. I tried to suck air, but nothing came out. My face began turning white. "But it was my wife's fault for letting you in. She will be punished for her acts, and yours. Fuck you. That doesn't mean you get to walk away free. What should I do to you, little bird?" "FFF. I know. You're complaining about her not eating enough. We can fix that. Chloe, come here." Between sobs she answered. She must have heard the entire exchange. "Yes, master." "Eat her hand." That was the last thing I remembered. It wasn't that I passed out. No. That wretched creature must have removed my memories, but when I regained it, I saw a stump where my left hand was supposed to be. Images of her mouth closing in around my hand floated in and out like hallucinations. In those momentary dreams, I was frozen solid, having to watch the scene go down. I felt the dampness of her mouth. The saliva tickling my skin. The snapping of my bones. I threw up whatever food I had in my gut. I reckon she did the same. I made sure not to hang up on any number after that. I also got into the habit of sending teams to those monsters occasionally. The type of teams specialized in hunting those disgusting things. I wasn't supposed to do that. Those teams were there primarily for disaster prevention. The government thought that as long as these monsters aren't actively hurting other people, it's fine, and we should let them live. Not a chance. Not even one. I stopped caring about lying, and I just tried to get as many of them killed as possible. I couldn't do it too much, or I'd be fired. I'd do it enough to get to the edge of being fired, before I stopped, and let their anger for me reset. There wasn't many willing to do my job, so that was probably why I still had it. There was a perk to being necessary and not easily replaceable, and that was that I had way less shits to care about. I could keep going until I became more of a harm than a threat. It reminded me of another time. Sometimes when people call in, the terrible act hasn't happened yet, just the start. The preset. What happens before, and as they describe their situation. I realize more and more what's going on. There's usually nothing to be done. Death was usually the best thing waiting for them. Nowadays, I just try to lead them to a moment of calm, before their life ends. Let them enjoy the little time. In the past, I was naive. I thought I could save these people if I gave them instructions. Failure after failure segmented it in my mind that it wasn't possible. That some disasters were to be accepted, not avoided. It was hard. Especially when there was children involved. To hear 3, 2, 4 children crying and begging for help. It just sucked something out of you. I couldn't. I'd cry and shut off the phone. I just couldn't. Not then, but now, I try to calm them. I lie to them. I know it's not right. I should probably just be straightforward with them. But I can't. Honestly, I find it a lot better to tell them a sweet lie, than to say, you're about to be murdered, eaten, abducted, tortured, and there's absolutely nothing you can do. I'm going to hang up now so that I can actually help people. Yeah. That would be worse than a lodge. Nothing could convince me otherwise. I think when it dawned on me how useless my advice really was when a person called me about cult activity. This time it wasn't a cult that had messed up, it was a soon-to-be victim of a cult calling in and begging for help. Believe it or not, we're contractually obligated to ignore those calls. But that's more legal shit. It just makes it impossible for the state to use the information gained from those calls to sue the cult. Nobody here actually followed that rule. Fuck those freaks. 911, what is the nature of your emergency? There's faces in the windows. I'm sorry, sir? I said, and put him on loudspeaker. It was early in the morning, and there wasn't many calls coming in. I didn't put him on speaker to entertain the rest of the speakers. I put him on speaker because I knew this wasn't going to be an average call, and everybody's experience and expertise would be needed. Please say that again. White faces. I think they're masks. Pushed against the window. Black eyes. I can't see the rest of their body. My co-worker, Tom, pushed the mute button as he said, "This seems like the Black Moon cult. These fuckers are vicious. We could send the cops there, but they'll probably be done by the time the cops arrive." He removed his finger from the mute button. "Alright sir, could you tell me your address?" Redacted. "Alright, cops are on their way." "Alright, are you alone at home?" "No. My wife is here, and my 3 children. 2 boys, and 1 baby girl. They're currently sheltered into the upstairs room." Petra pressed the mute button. "Wait, isn't that the cult that watches people get slaughtered?" "Yup," Tom said. "They've planted people all over the house." Snatching his hand, I pulled it away from the button. "Grab a weapon." "What?" I said grab a weapon. "A gun preferably. Not a knife, absolutely not a knife. Something long and blunt. A frying pan." "We've got a frying pan," he said, as I heard him rush over to the kitchen and grab it. "Why do I need it?" "Go to your family now." 3 kids, 1 mother, was a goddamn wet dream for these sick bastards. They were easy prey up there. One of the cult members would crawl out of the corner they hid in, approach the family, and slash into them, causing all havoc. He needed to make it there in time. The upside to blunt weapons was that they could knock people out. After they were knocked out, they had no defense. Somebody with no defense could easily be taken care of. It was way better than a knife. Sure, you'd kill the other person, but not quickly enough for them to not seriously hurt you back, even kill you. I heard him rushing up the stairs, and jerking a door open. He breathed heavily. "Oh, thank God." "Are they safe?" "They're safe." "Great. Lock the door." "Why?" "Just do it." He slammed the door shut, and I heard the lock snap into place. There was crying in the background. I'd take a guess it was the baby crying. Poor thing. I really hoped that things would turn out well. "All right," I said. "What I'm about to say will freak you out." Question mark. "One of them is in the room already." "What?" he said. I could imagine his head jerking around, as he tried to figure out what happened. But, then another noise took his attention. They broke the door of their house open, and I could hear multiple men rushing in. His breath quickened. "Search the room carefully. Check under the bed, check the ceiling, the wardrobe, everywhere. Remember, cops are on their way. Just survive long enough." Fuck, he said, his voice getting further away from the phone, occasionally. He was really searching the house. "I need you to calm down." Christ. The words sounded ridiculous even as I said them, but it was true. He needed to calm down. It was necessary. Panic wouldn't do him any good, except for strengthening his muscles for a strike. "I am fucking calm," he spat. I could hear him stomping around the room. Suddenly, his wife shrieked. I knew something terrible had happened. "You fucking bastard." The sound of metal smashing bone was a satisfying one on movie. In real life it was a gnarly, disgusting sound, that made you cringe with disgust, and jerk away from the sound as much as possible. There would be one thunk, and then another, as the head smashed against the floor. "You fucking bastard," the man spat. The frying pan banged into flesh again, and again, and again. The door to their bedroom began shaking. I could hear the people on the other side desperately trying to get through. Tom pressed the mute button. "I reckon we should end the call here. We can't just abandon him. He's already dead. The last thing we want is to catch the attention of those sick fucks." "Fuck them," I stood up screaming. "This isn't right. It's never been. Welcome to the world, sunshine. Now hang up." "No." Petra joined the conversation. "Hey. I think he's got a point. There's no saving them at this point. We can try. How far away are the police?" 10 minutes. "We can work with that," I said and unmuted. "Tom, you there? Tom, hello?" I hadn't been paying attention to the noise. I just heard screaming. Raw, guttural screaming. That couldn't be good, but who knew who it was screaming? The cultists or Tom? All right, I knew. "Hello," a deep voice came back. "Not Tom. This is 911, yes? What are you going to say, that I broke the rules?" "That you did, but this was simply excellent. The fury, the passion, the raw emotion this man displayed was simply delicious. We'd like a recording of the call." "Fuck no," I said. "Fuck all of you. You're not going to get shit. You're going to regret saying that." That was the last thing he said before I ended the call. At the moment, rage filled me, and made me not care for his threat. It felt like such a small thing. Entirely meaningless in front of my rage. This piece of shit was going to get it. I walked around the office fantasizing of all the ways I would get this fuck. I would send every goddamn agency made for this at them, and I'd make sure their entire cult collapsed. Oh, how I'd fucking destroy them. Then my rage disappeared, and I couldn't believe what I'd done. I'd rejected the wishes of a cult. A cult so established they were included in the Black Book. Oh Christ. I was dead. They'd played their sick little game on me. Oh fuck. They'd probably already found where I lived, and went there. "I can't go home," I muttered to myself. Home meant death. Something that was a mere game to those freaks. No. I'd have to stay in the car until this whole thing quieted down, and they relaxed. That was the plan. That was what I ended up doing. I sat in my car, with the engine on, stopped at a road. I was in a spot where I could see my surroundings clearly. Nobody would be sneaking up on me, that was for sure. My panic wouldn't let me sleep for the whole night. I sat in the chair, my pupils jerking in all directions, expecting the cultists to pop up at any moment. Despite my brave front earlier, I really didn't want to die. I fell asleep at dawn. I must have slept through the entire day of work. I'm sure they wouldn't mind with the current scenarios. Hell, being hunted by a cult was probably one of the best excuses there was in the business. But, I realized, that I hadn't woken up to the sun. The buzzing of my phone must have done it. I looked and saw that I had a missed call from an unknown call. It had just happened. The phone started ringing again. Almost instinctively I picked it up. That's what being a 911 operator will do. "What's the nature of your Hey Marie." It was the same dark voice from before. I shuddered. It just made the thing more real. Before this call I'd believed of a slim possibility of them just letting it go. Nope. Not a chance. That was clearly not happening. They were not going to let me off the hook. "So, you haven't been coming home, have you?" He could hear my loud breaths, but I didn't want him to. I didn't want him to know that I was scared at all, or that this was impacting me. But there was no hiding it. I was having a tough time holding a mental breakdown away. The breathing was a necessary sacrifice. "You guys are sick," I spat. "All of you." "Marie. At least we're not camping out in a car." A thick arm cloaked in black wrapped around my neck and squeezed. I saw one of the cult members sitting in the back. I couldn't get any breath. I had already had a tough time getting breath, but this made it even more difficult. I saw him in the car front mirror. He wore a white mask, with black holes as eyes, like Scream, except the eyes didn't look like fabric. They looked like the void, and I could see them spinning, circulating slightly. The hand stopped squeezing as hard, letting me take nervous breaths, but it remained there, around my neck, and there was absolutely nothing I could do. This was it. This was my death. I knew it. "So Marie," they said, "we recognize the value of 911 operators and would not like to hurt the community, if you give us a recording of the tape." "Sure, fucking fine. I knew you'd come along." The cultist must have entered the car when I was sleeping. I wasn't sure how they got past the locks without me noticing. Probably some fucking witchcraft involved in that. Although, even though he'd almost taken my life, It was comedic seeing him simply open the car door and stepping out. He didn't follow the road back. He didn't follow it forward. The man marched off into the woods with a confident walk, as if he knew exactly where to go. He really convinced me that he had somewhere to go, but I doubted it. This was the middle of the woods, and there was no way they had so much control. Hanging up the phone, I drove back to my office, got a tape and sent it over to them. It wasn't something I was proud over. Honestly, in my dreams I stayed resistant and told them to fuck off, but it was different in real life. I wanted to live my life. I guessed when my life was being threatened, just a few seconds away from death, clear death, not some sort of sudden heart attack, things became really clear to me. I wanted to live. So I gave them the tape. Again, I'm not proud of it. I personally removed it from our data storage so that I'd never have to relive the terrible moment, but they have it, and they probably love it. Quite frankly, the more I work this job, the more I understand why nobody around me seems to care one bit about anything happening. Day in, and day out, terrible things happening, monsters, cultists, disasters. It's all terrifying. It all left me feeling wrong. But, you know, I'm just a person. At the end of the day I'm doing this job to pay my wage, just as I thought at the start. There's just extra complications, extra rules, and you know, when you get good at following them, and when you know the book inside out, it adds a lot of flavor to the job. I say that, but honestly, I would never ever risk my life again in the way I did. I've done it too many times. It's never paid off. I've never changed anything. Actually, I've made it significantly worse sometimes. What was that phrasing? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Screw the intentions. Emotions know better. The fright, horror, terror, and dread were clearly there for a reason after all. They told me to stay away. I'd ignored them once, but now, I listen to them. They're on my side and I know that very well. They're working to keep me safe from all of the shit out there. Maybe I'm a coward, but at least I'm alive, and that's way better than a dead man. A fool if you ask me. But that philosophical nonsense was just nonsense. I'm just a frightened girl. I don't know what to do, and honestly, that's pissed me off. But hey, I don't know what to do.